What is going on, everybody? Hope everyone's enjoying their Memorial Day so far. And we are here previewing the NCAA Baseball Regionals preview. And we're just a couple of hours ago, we got the field of 64, and we're going to run through each region by region from the Knoxville all the way down to the Greenville region. We're going to be picking the winners and also the runner up as we use the D1 Baseball's Bracket Challenge. We did the same thing a year ago, did pretty well. So we're back here running through the bracket. So let's waste no more time. Let's get into the field of 64 and see which 16 teams will be on to the super regional round, which is going to be starting June 17th, and then all the way to the College World Series finals in Omaha. So let's go on to the number one overall seed, the Knoxville Regional. We have the Tennessee Volunteers. Once again, they're the number one overall seed, a spot they were in 2 years ago. The number one seed definitely hasn't been too kind as of recently. We have not had a national champion be the number one seed in this century. So we'll see if the Vols can change that narrative. Tennessee both won the SEC regular season championship. Kentucky, they were the co-champion, but Tennessee won the head-to-head against the Cats. And then Tennessee, they lost their first game in Hoover, 13-4 to Vanderbilt. But after that, they really cruised all the way to beat LSU 4-3 in the SEC tournament championship to win their fifth overall SEC tournament championship. So Tony Vitello definitely doing phenomenal things down there in Knoxville. So we see the Vols being the number one seed. We had the 4 seed, the Norse out of Northern Kentucky. They won their respective conference tournament championship to claim this spot. Number 3, Indiana. Indiana was one of the last 4 teams in. They had an RPI north of 50. So a little bit of surprise in Indiana. One of the few teams here in the Big Ten, Illinois. They also got into the tournament championship. So did Nebraska. So you got 3 teams from the Big Ten. So you see Indiana being the 3 seed here in Knoxville. And then you also have the number 2 seed, Southern Miss. Southern Miss won the Sun Belt Championship tournament by defeating Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern was also one of those Sun Belt teams, along with Troy, who were on the bubble, but Georgia Southern was out of this tournament. Southern Miss, though, in that game, they had to come all the way back. They won that game ultimately 14-11 in the offensive shootout. So those are your 4 teams in Knoxville. Let's go ahead and pick the winner. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, in Lindsey Nelson Stadium, I think that the way that Tennessee's pitching staff is really set up, they should really dominate this region. So I think that the Volunteers move on to the Super Regionals. Now we're going to decide who goes to the runner-up. I don't think it's going to be Northern Kentucky. I think it's either between Indiana or Southern Miss. I'm going to go with Southern Miss. A storyline here to note, Tennessee and Southern Miss did face off in last year's Super Regional. So the committee, they love to just put pretty much the same teams head-to-head. It looks like we'll talk about another one down the road here in another bracket. But Tennessee moves on. Southern Miss is the runner-up here in Knoxville. Let's move on now to the number 16 overall national seed. It is the East Carolina Pirates. A little bit of controversy between East Carolina and a couple of other hosts. Arizona, they ended up hosting with an RPI north of 30. Mississippi State, they definitely had an argument to be a top 16 seed. Ultimately, the committee went with East Carolina, so they find themselves being the number 16 seed. East Carolina was definitely a hot team to start. They were ranked pretty much in the top 15 the whole way. They were heavy favorites going into the American Athletic Conference tournament to win that, but Tulane ultimately won it. East Carolina, they fell to Wichita State in the semifinals. But nonetheless, that outing out there in Clearwater didn't hurt their chances of hosting, as we see East Carolina be the number 1 seed in the Greenville. Evansville, this is definitely a scary 4 seed. Evansville has some real quality wins down the stretch, and they won the Missouri Valley Conference. Missouri Valley Conference, I think that a lot of people are going to say, I think that Indiana State would have been the heavy favorite, but we see Evansville win that conference championship, so we see Evansville be the 4 seed here. VCU is the 3 seed in this region, and then we have Wake Forest. Wake Forest made a deep run in last year's tournament, making it all the way to Omaha before getting bounced by the eventual national champs, the LSU Tigers. But Wake Forest, this is a team. I know they definitely got outclassed by Florida State in the semifinals, but Wake Forest, this is a team that I think that's playing with house money right now. Their pitching staff really set up their offense, especially Nick Kurtz. Nick Kurtz had himself a heck of an ACC tournament. So if he can get hot at the right time, this Wake Forest team could definitely go far. And I'm going to have my first 2 seed here, a little upset. If you want to call it upset, I don't really see upset here, but I'm going to go with Wake Forest. We set up a real interesting matchup, with Chase Burns being from Wake Forest, the former Tennessee reliever. So that could definitely create some chaos there in this bracket. But I'm going to have Wake Forest winning the Greenville Regional, with East Carolina ultimately becoming the runner-up. So far we have our first matchup set up in the Supers with number 1 overall seed Tennessee facing off against Wake Forest. Man, that would be an absolute treat if we got that in the Super Regional round. Let's move on now to the number 9 overall national seed in Norman, Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma won the Big 12 regular season championship, and it wasn't very close. They won that by 3 games. They made it all the way to the championship in the Big 12 tournament down there in Arlington, Texas, but Oklahoma State got the win there. Look at this. The number 4 seed, Oral Roberts, the Cinderella story is back. Record isn't so good, and their RPI is not very good either. It's in the 200s. So this is not the same Oral Roberts team that we saw last year, but who knows? I mean, we either see a 3 or a 4 seed make a deep run, so maybe Oral Roberts can create that magic. But they ended up winning their conference tournament championship, and that was pretty much the only way that Oral Roberts was going to get in, specifically with their record being under 500. We have the Connecticut Huskies, a 3 seed out of the Big East. The Big East has 2 teams with UConn and St. John Xavier with a high RPI. It was left out by the committee. So we see UConn here at number 3. Duke really impressed with his team down the stretch. The ACC tournament, if they can play like that, I think that they could pretty much beat anybody in this region, specifically Oklahoma. Going to have a tough battle there with UConn in that 3-2 matchup. But I really like the way that Duke, this offense is very potent. Just put up 16 runs on Florida State to win the ACC tournament championship. And that is, honestly, thought that Duke could have been one of those other teams that could have got a top 16 seed and potentially host. But Duke gets left out here. So I ultimately think that this is going to come down to either between Oklahoma and Duke. Really liking the way that Duke is showing. I mean, I just talked about it. Their offense is very, very potent. They could strike at any time. But I am going to go with the home team here. I'm going to go with Oklahoma to pull this one out. And Norman is going to be very close. And I think that Duke, well, I would not be surprised if this is like a 7-game, goes to a 7-game regional. There's going to be some of those that go to 7 games, winner take home. So I am going to go with the Sooners to move on to the Super Regional. So we have another national seed moving on. And then the Norman region is paired up with the Tallahassee Regional, with Florida State being the number 8 national seed. Florida State, after missing the tournament last year, really good coaching job by Link Jarrett, the former Notre Dame head coach, moving to Florida State. So Florida State's back in the dance where they belong. We'll see if they can create some magic. I definitely think that this team has what it takes to get back to the College World Series, a place that they're quite familiar with. Number 4 seed Stetson. So we're seeing a lot of Florida teams in this regional. Another Florida team, UCF. They were the last 4 in. I believe they went 2-2 in the Big 12 tournament, so that was good enough for them to get into the field of 64. So we see the Golden Knights. Very good job by them. Their first season in the Big 12 is a good one as they find themselves in the field. And then number 2 seed Alabama. Alabama was in that cluster of 13 and 17 SEC teams. Ultimately, the SEC got an historic 11 teams in here into this tournament. So we see the Crimson Tide as the number 2 seed there. So they were one and done the SEC tournament. They lost to South Carolina, sitting on the edge of their seats, but didn't really I think that they were safely in no matter what, specifically being on this 2 line here. But ultimately, think that the host will move on here as we set up an 8v9 matchup here in the Supers with Oklahoma and Florida State. This would definitely be a big battle between UCF and Alabama, but I think that Alabama going to give them the nod as the runner-up, but I would definitely watch out for that UCF team. I think that could definitely be sneaky. A sneaky 3 seed that could definitely spoil someone's regional like Florida State. But I do have the Seminoles moving on and facing the Sooners of Oklahoma as we get an 8v9 in the Supers. All right, another SEC team is the Arkansas Razorbacks. They are the number 5 overall national seed. So we have Arkansas, the winners of the SEC West, an 0-2 showing there in SEC tournament. But I think that they were definitely motivated, going back to the College World Series, they're going to be set up one of the best pitchers, if not the best pitcher in college baseball with Hagen Smith. He's definitely going to be dominant. It's definitely going to be a tough out to beat Arkansas, specifically at home. Number 4 seed, we have Southeast Missouri State. Definitely a respectable season for the Red Hawks of Southeast Missouri State. But they definitely got a tough draw with Arkansas. They're probably going to be facing Hagen Smith in the first game. Then we have Kansas State. This was another bubble team, but they got in. And then number 2 seed, Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech, they won the regular season championship in the Conference USA, but ultimately fell to Dallas Baptist in their conference tournament that was in Ruston. So Louisiana Tech, they definitely can be a force to be reckoned with, but I'm not picking against the Hogs, especially at their home park. And then I'm going to have Louisiana Tech being the runner-up. So a little bit of chalky, especially with the 1 and the 2s advancing, but that's really how I see it there. I think that Arkansas and Louisiana Tech are definitely the 2 best teams in that region. And I think that Arkansas's pitching staff will carry them to another super regional. They're paired up with the number 12 seed, the Virginia Cavaliers in Charlottesville. Virginia is another ACC team to really watch. I think that they could definitely make some noise. We see Penn, the Quakers, they won the Ivy League championship to get to the spot. Same with St. John's being the 3 seed. They won the Big East tournament championship. And St. John's, they started off the season by facing off against Florida, and they won 2 games, I believe, at Florida. So that's definitely the start of the season that they wanted to see. So we see St. John's at the number 3 seed. Mississippi State, I talked about them early. I definitely think that they could have definitely been a host, possible snub of a host too. So I think that Mississippi State, real good showing in the SEC tournament. They picked up 2 wins to get them into contention for a host, but ultimately the committee chose not to. So I'm going to go with another 2 seed advancing on. I do like the way that Mississippi State's been playing down the stretch. Nothing against Virginia. I just think that Mississippi State is playing hot at the right time. Virginia definitely has the offense to contend. I think that this is going to be one of the more offensive regionals. You have St. John's, Mississippi State, Virginia. Those offenses would not be surprised if we see a lot of home runs leave the park here in Charlottesville. But ultimately going to have an all SEC matchup here with Arkansas, Mississippi State in the super regional, as we have another national seed going home early. I just think that's what it's going to be. There's going to be a lot of national seeds it's going to get knocked off in this round. I just think there's a lot of quality 2 seeds and quality 3 seeds that could definitely make some noise and spoil somebody postseason. So Mississippi State moves on. Now let's go on to Tucson, where we see another national seed, Arizona. They're the number 13 national seed. With Arizona. Arizona not only won the regular season, but the conference championship tournament in the Pac-12. And ultimately, that's going to be the last sporting event that we see in the Pac-12, as teams are just going their separate ways. This is how college athletics is. Grand Canyon, their interesting story. They did not win the conference tournament championship. That was Tarleton State. But Tarleton State, the stupidest rule that the NCAA has, I think that they have to wait 2 or 3 years to be eligible since they moved over from D2 level to D1 level. But Grand Canyon, since they won the regular season tournament, the championship in the regular season, Grand Canyon gets a spot. And to note, Grand Canyon took 2 out of 3 of Arizona. So Arizona is definitely going to be on their high heels. But this is a tough region just looking at it. You have West Virginia, the 3 seed, J.J. Weatherholt, one of the best hitters, and then their head coach. This is going to be his final go. So those guys are definitely going to be rallying around their head coach. And then Dallas Baptist, one of the scarier 2 seeds in this field. So if you're really looking at a region that's one of the toughest, Arizona, I think that with Grand Canyon, definitely a strong 4, even though they didn't win their conference tournament championship. They definitely have a strong offense. West Virginia, definitely strong as well. And then Dallas Baptist. So just how strong that this is. Nothing against Arizona. They're on an 11-game win streak. But I think I got to go Dallas Baptist winning this one. I think that DBU, they've really been consistent throughout the whole entire regular season and also the postseason. And I think that this could definitely create some chaos here. But I am going to go with Arizona being the runner-up. But, man, watch out for DBU. I think that if you're looking at a 2 seed to go far, make it to Omaha, look for Dallas Baptist to maybe be that team. Let's go on now to Chapel Hill. North Carolina is the final of the top 4 national seeds here on this side of the bracket. North Carolina, really good season for the Tar Heels. Probably not what they wanted in the ACC tournament. It was a quick one for them being the number 1 seed in that tournament. But this is a team that could absolutely rake the baseball, and their pitching staff can also travel too. Number 4 seed Long Island. They won their respective conference tournament to get to this. So congratulations to the Sharks of Long Island making here. Number 3 seed Wofford. They won the SoCon Conference Tournament Championship. 40 wins for the Terriers. And the Terriers have an ace. They definitely have a pitcher. It's definitely going to give LSU their all. And they have an offense that can also get some challenges to this regional too. And then the number 2 seed, the reigning national champs, the LSU Tigers. If you had told me the first half of the season, this would be a team not even close to making it, starting the SEC play 3-12. What a turnaround it's been for Jay Johnson. And I think they are winners of 16 of the last 20 or something. It's crazy like that. But they made it all the way to the SEC championship, ultimately falling to the Volunteers of Tennessee. But you look at who's number 1 and number 2 in their pitching staff. You got Gage Jump, you got Luke Coleman, and this offense starting to hum. So LSU is looking like a dangerous team. And like Jay Johnson says, he thinks that they're a top 15 team. They're sure playing like it. And there's got to be one of the top 4 national seeds that's got to fall. You might as well do it now. I think that LSU got to go with the momentum with LSU. I just like the way that they're set up pitching-wise. If they win game number 1, they got Luke Coleman in game number 2 against North Carolina. If they win that, it would also probably have to go to Nate Atkinhausen, somebody like that. But definitely, if LSU wins game number 1, they could definitely be set up. And I am going to go with North Carolina, the runner-up. No offense to Wofford, Long Island. I just think that LSU and North Carolina, probably the 2 top teams here. So this would be another one that I would probably say that goes to at least 7 games. I think that North Carolina and LSU is going to give them a run for their money. LSU and North Carolina in the past has had great games, especially in Omaha. So it would not be surprising if one of these teams takes North Carolina to 7 games. So we have 2 seeds facing off, Dallas Baptist and LSU. If that were to happen, it would go to a bid off. So it would definitely be interesting if DBU or LSU gets the host in the Supers if that plays out. All right, that is the left portion of the bracket. Now let's go on to the right-hand side of the bracket where we see the number 2 overall national seed being the Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky back-to-back top 16 national seeds. They were the 12 seed last year. They're the 2 seed this year. The regular season SEC champs, Kentucky. They beat Arkansas, and that was their only win in the SEC tournament. Number 4 seed Western Michigan. They won the MAC to get here at this number 4 spot. Illinois, we see another Big Ten team. They won the regular season championship in that conference. And then Indiana State. Indiana State was one of those other teams that I was definitely shocked to not see be a top 16 seed and be on the host line, but they're on the 2 line. Indiana State, they hosted last year. They have to go on the road this year. Indiana State's definitely a ball club to watch. But I'm going to go with Kentucky. I think that the Cats are playing really good down the stretch. So give me Kentucky. I think that this is going to be a duel between Illinois and Indiana State for the runner-up. I'm going to go with Indiana State and that ball club to move on. That was a team that went to the Supers last year, ultimately falling to TCU before making it to Omaha. All right, let's go on now to who they're paired up with, the Corvallis Regional, the number 15 overall seed Oregon State out of the Pac-12. And you have 2 Louisiana teams going west. Yeah, number 4 seed Tulane. We see Tulane once again. Tulane last year was 19-40. Way better record this year with 33-20. So Tulane makes it to the dance after walking off Wichita State to win the American Athletic Conference Championship once again. We see Nicholls State. Nicholls, back-to-back years that they won the Southland Conference Tournament, and they did it in dominating fashion, beating McNeese State 15-1. So 2 Louisiana schools moving out west, and then UC Irvine just takes a bus ride up north. UC Irvine, definitely a scary ball club, but I think that Tulane, being a 4 seed, they're definitely a better 4 seed than they were last year. I definitely think that offense can provide a scare for Oregon State. But I'm going to go with another 1-2 here. I think that Oregon State moves on, and then UC Irvine gets the runner-up spot, especially being out west. I just think that with Tulane and Nicholls, you got to think about how far of a road trip that's going to be. I think that could definitely play well into it. But I just think that Oregon State and UC Irvine are definitely the two best teams here in this region. So let's go on now to the 7 and the 10. The 7 and the 10 matchup here out of NC State being the number 10 overall seed out of the ACC. They'll face off against the number four seed Bryant in their first game. And then we see the 2 and the 3 seed with South Carolina out of the SEC. Like I mentioned, another 13 and 17 in the conference, but South Carolina had a really good showing in Hoover. So I think that, Cole Messina, got to like the way that he's playing. And then James Madison, who was on the bubble out of the Sun Belt, the Dukes get into the dance. And let's go through here and see who's going to move on. I'm going to go with the Gamecocks. If they could play like they did against Hoover, they're definitely going to be a tough out. Really like the way that this offense has been showing. And they definitely have the pitching staff to shut down. And NC State offense has definitely been raking the baseball as of late. So I'm going to go with an SEC team moving on, and NC State going to be the runner-up. So we have another upset here, if you want to call it. But it's college baseball. I mean, anything can pretty much happen in these brackets. So I'm going to go with the Gamecocks moving on. And they're paired up with another SEC school, with Athens Regional, the number 7 seed. I was a little bit surprised to see Georgia being the number 7 national seed. This was a team that was one and done in the SEC tournament. I would have thought that maybe Florida State would have got the nod. Oklahoma maybe got the nod, but nope. Guess the committee didn't really look too much at the SEC tournament, as Georgia remains the number 7 national seed. They get Army, and when you get Army, you're going to get a really good game. They're going to come to play. They're not going to be scared of anyone, so you got to be out on the look for Army. But with Georgia, we already know what their best player is with Charlie Condon. Hit almost, 35, 36 home runs this season. Georgia Tech gets into the field. This was another bubble team. We get another ACC team here, and they don't have to go too far to face their arch rival in Georgia. And they get number 2 seed UNC Wilmington, a very good 2 seed here. But I think that this is Georgia and Georgia Tech. I think that Georgia Tech, they got a guy that can absolutely match the baseball, and he's only a freshman too. So nothing against UNC Wilmington, but I just think that Georgia Tech and Georgia, if they meet up, that's definitely going to be a great game. But I have the Dogs facing off. If we get South Carolina and Georgia in the Super Regional, boy, that would be an absolute treat there, especially if you're an SEC fan. If you're not, probably not. You don't want to see an SEC versus SEC school in the Supers, but that's what we get here in this prediction. Now let's move on to the Clemson, South Carolina Regional, where we see the number 6 overall national seed, the Clemson Tigers. They get the number 4 seed, the High Point. So congratulations, High Point, for making the field. Then we get the Chanticleers out of Coastal Carolina. That was another bubble team. We see the Chanticleers get in Mr. Gilmore's last go there, the national champion back there in 2016. So we'll see if Coastal Carolina gets one more go for their head coach. And then you see Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was one of those teams that was in, maybe out before the SEC tournament. They made it all the way to the semifinal round before ultimately losing to Tennessee. So this is definitely going to be a great matchup here if we get Clemson and Vanderbilt. Ultimately going to go with Clemson. Clemson got knocked out early by Tennessee. They're definitely going to want some revenge against an SEC school. They're going to get it. So I have Clemson moving on and Vanderbilt being the runner-up. But this is definitely going to be a phenomenal regional. You get Coastal versus Vanderbilt, and maybe a potential Vanderbilt versus Clemson for it all. That's definitely going to be a treat to watch down there in Clemson, South Carolina. They're paired up with the number 11 overall national seed, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State finds themselves once again as a host. Last year did not go so well for them. They got beat by the number 4 seed Oral Roberts, the Cinderella last year's story. So Oklahoma State, you know that they're going to want to get to the next round this year. They get Niagara, the number 4 overall seed. Congratulations to them for making it to the tournament. They're the first time ever making it to the field of 64. So definitely congratulations to that program. We see Florida. Florida with some question marks. You know, they were only one game over 500. They had a number 1 strength of schedule. Ultimately, the Gators got in, even with losing in the first round of the SEC tournament to Vanderbilt. The Gators get them a spot. Number 2, Nebraska. Nebraska, the Big Ten tournament champions after beating Penn State 2-1 in Omaha. So we've seen the Nebraska Cornhuskers make it. So Florida, their record isn't very good, but this is a dangerous ball club. You know, if a guy like Jack Caglione, Their pitching staff is really set up to win a regional. So they're going to give Oklahoma State all that they can handle. And I feel like there's always a 3 and a 1. But I'm going to go with Oklahoma State, though. I mean, I feel like every year I pick Oklahoma State and they let me down. I'm going to give them one more opportunity. So give me Oklahoma State. Florida and Nebraska for the runner-up. This is definitely a tough choice. I'm going to go with Nebraska being the runner-up here. I think that Nebraska really set up well. Florida, it has really been an up and down team. So I can't really figure them out. But I would not be shocked if they definitely take this Stillwater regional. They definitely have the talent. We'll see if they can put it together for 4 or 3 games here in the Stillwater regional. Now let's move on to the Santa Barbara regional, where we have the number 14 overall national seed, UCSB. Not only did they win the regular season, but they also won the conference tournament championship in the Big West, really dominating season for the Gauchos. We have Fresno State. They're back in the field, the underdogs. If you remember, in 2008, they were the 4th seed, and they won the whole thing. So we'll see if Fresno State can pretty much rewrite history a couple of years later. We also pretty much have – it's an all-West regional. We have the 3-seed Oregon, 2-seed San Diego. San Diego, the 2 seed, they won against Portland to win their conference tournament championship. So this is pretty much, like I mentioned, all West Coast teams. I'm going to go with UCSB, moving on here. I'm going to go with San Diego. I think that San Diego really playing well down the stretch. So I think that this is a 1-2 once again. And I have UCSB, the number 14 overall national seed, moving on. So we have our final regional to look at, the College Station regional, where we have Texas A&M being the number 3 national seed out of the SEC. We have the SWAC champs, Grambling State. They're the number 4 seed. Texas, I feel like if it's baseball, if it's softball, or if it's football, it feels like every time that Texas A&M, you're going to get Texas. I mean, they just really try to get that rivalry anytime that they can. But Texas, they're being the 3 seed. And then you have the Louisiana Raging Cajuns as the 2 seed. Not the showing that Raging Cajun fans had in the Sun Belt Championship tournament, 0-2. But I think that this Louisiana – we saw this matchup literally last season. Texas and Louisiana both played each other in the Coral Gables regional. Texas got the better hand of Louisiana, and Texas ultimately moved on to face off against Stanford last season. So we'll see if history repeats itself. I think that it's really going to come down to Texas A&M. I mean, Texas A&M, you got Braden Montgomery, you got Laviolette. I mean, you got dudes that can absolutely just like hit a nuke anytime that they step up to the plate. But I think that Texas A&M being at home in front of their fans is definitely an advantage. And this time, I'm going to have the Raging Cajuns getting a little bit of revenge on Texas. That might surprise some people, but I'm going to go with the Cajuns moving on. So before we close out this preview and prediction, let's go through and see what I predicted. So we have Tennessee and Wake Forest, Kentucky, Oregon State, Oklahoma, Florida State, South Carolina, Georgia, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Clemson, Oklahoma State, Dallas Baptist, LSU, and UC Santa Barbara, and Texas A&M all moving on to the Super Regionals. So let me know down in the comments who you have moving on to the Super Regionals. We will see you next time for when we're going to talk about the Super Regional preview and who ultimately goes on to the Men's College World